I think Skinamarink might have just created a new horror subgenre. Yeah. Skinamarink stars Lucas Ross Paul, and is directed by Kyle Edward Ball. What's up, guys? Welcome to the strangest movie I have ever seen in my entire life. You have to see it to believe it, I guess. This is going to be an unorthodox review, if I'm being honest. I like that, though. I do like seeing movies that really go way far out of left field, only because of the creativity, the imagination, because at the end of the day, that's what movies are all about. You know, it's about what's in here and your imagination. And sometimes what's in here can be really strange to everyone else. And it might be crystal freaking clear to you. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's okay. But this movie definitely got some buzz, I think, in the film festival circuit. So there's some people that are finding something in it, you know, and again, that's part of the charm of films, is they all strike a different chord with all of us. I mean, I can go Halloween Ends, you know, half of you hated it, some of you loved it, a lot of you scratched your heads, but you can pretty much take any movie and you can find differing opinions, you know, it's just the way it is. So I did go into this movie not knowing anything whatsoever. I did see the trailer, you know, in this house. In this house.
In this house. In this house.
From the trailer, I thought for sure that this was going to be a very ambiguous, abstract type of horror movie, and maybe like a haunted house feel to it. Definitely trying to harken back to, you know, maybe the 70s. Some of that's true. So anyway, I guess let's give you a quick plot synopsis. There are these two children in this house, and they are looking for their father. The mother is upstairs, and they are called upstairs and downstairs a couple times throughout the movie. And there's about 10 different ways you could probably tell that story. If anything, this movie is a lesson that you can have a story and you can choose your way to tell that story. You can be as abstract as possible, or you can be as linear as possible. This movie chooses to go abstract. And at the beginning of the review, I stated that this might have created a new subgenre of horror. And I guess the name for me for that subgenre would be abstract horror. And when you watch this movie, you'll know what I'm talking about, okay? Because like what you're seeing right now in this review, just abstract images. Of course, I'm poking fun and I'm being silly, but these images throughout the movie do try to tell a story in a very, very abstract way, okay? And I could tell within about 10 minutes after watching this, I was like, oh, okay, I see what they're doing. You know, because some movies, they do start out kind of abstract, and then they work their way into the story, and then it starts really making sense, and then we're introduced to our characters, and you know, the story fleshes itself out, and there's a big final act and all that stuff. Not this movie. There are moments throughout the movie, key moments, that will attempt to keep you afloat as to what the story is, hoping that you will care. And there are a couple of moments where they do try to scare you. This movie does give you a very uneasy feeling, you know? And if anything, I think this movie feels like an experiment. How frustrated can you get your audience? Not just that, but can you get your audience's heart racing from anger? That's what this movie did for me. I was just getting so freaking frustrated with this movie, guys. And you know what? Maybe it's not for me, okay? This was, to be very blunt, like watching paint dry. It was excruciating. And again, maybe that was the point of the movie. Maybe Kyle Edward Ball wanted to piss the audience off. Or maybe just maybe there's a very personal reason for the direction of this movie. So I'm definitely not attacking Kyle Edward Ball. He attempted to create something different, and boy does he. This is very different, okay? It's not the type of movie that you're going to be throwing in every Halloween. It's a tough watch. And I think there's a lot of movies like this that are tough watches. I don't think I've ever seen a movie so abstract in my entire life, though. Now, from a horror standpoint, as a horror fan, there were moments in this movie where I was like, they're building up to a very frightening scene, and there are a couple of images and moments. I mean, hell, the whole movie is uncomfortable. Okay, I'll give it that. There were times where, I hate to use the word pretentious, but it feels like this movie wants to be scary so bad, but it just can't do it, you know? It wants to really frighten the hell out of you, but it just doesn't have the recipe there. So instead, let's just be really abstract, okay? I think, given the premise of this movie, two young boys in this, I'm going to say the house feels like a demonic type of house. You know, you take that story, you can come up with something extremely unsettling, because kids in horror movies, when done right, are extremely effective and scary as hell. The way this movie is directed, and oftentimes the camera is just in a weird position. There are camera tricks along the way too. Most of the time, you never see the subject's face, you know. You have a lot of low angles and a lot of high angles. And does any of it make sense? I mean, I get where they're going, but no. As far as like storytelling, entertainment, this is not an entertaining movie. And I'm sorry, I love movies that entertain me. I like to be entertained in movies. And let's talk about like elevated horror for a minute here, okay? I'm your guy. I am always on the side of quote unquote highbrow films, you know, Hereditary, It Follows, polarizing films. More times than not, I'm on the side of liking those movies, okay? But every now and then, it'll just be a little bit too weird for me, and, you know, Skinamarink happens, okay? This movie was horrible. And I can separate, like, truly cliche, formulaic Hollywood schlock. You know, I can acknowledge that that's horrible for a different reason. At least this is unique. So I have to give it that. But it's excruciating to get through. Excruciating. I have to give it a looped in hell. I do. I have to give it a looped in hell. And this is the first looped in hell I've given maybe a couple years. But the definition, the very definition of looped in hell for me is, if I am in hell, what is the one movie that I want to be on Satan's movie screen that would torture me for all of eternity? Skinamarink. There you go.